call this meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is the consent. Recommended action is approve the items below, which are included in the consent agenda 5A, the meeting minutes from September 15th. 6A, the appointment of mentors for 2020-2021, teaching staff maternity leave extension request, and 6C, appointment of additional coaching staff. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Yes. Thank you, Dan.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussions or exclusions?
That's weird.
Yeah, I just turned it on. I'm just waiting for Colleen and Martha.
Yes.
Martha?
I'm not in the meeting yet. I vote yes.
Okay. All right. Seven, yes.
7 yes, 0 no's, motion passes. Excuse me. For the good of the cause. Anything?
No, okay.
So moving along to reports. Anti-racism state group, Martha.
Sorry, I can't be there in person tonight. Sometimes family gets in the way, but that's okay. So I'm going to share my screen in a moment. Okay. Here we go. So this is a memo to the Board of Ed from a small group of people who met to talk about things. And the setting is, in no particular order, our nation is struggling with upheavals related to race. I think everybody agrees on that. And with all the other anti-racism activities that have been happening, protests and statements and assertions and so forth, I thought maybe we had something along those lines as well, but we didn't. So the board empowered me to convene a work group under the Shared Decision-Making Committee to think about this and make advice to the board. And so here you get your advice. But first, we wanted you to know that we came together for this purpose because we care about the community. And as we talked that evening and through various emails, otherwise, it's become clear that people just don't want to say, I'm not a racist. They want to say, I am actively anti-racist. I'm going to take some steps. I'm going to learn stuff. So that's why I highlighted that term in this slide, anti-racist. Advocating for proactive steps that challenge racist and discriminatory behavior, whether intended or unintentional. It's most of the time it's unintentional. Oops. So it was Heather DeForest, Joan Hallett-Valentine, Kat Haney, myself, Noelle Carmichael, Roger Catania, and Sonia Franklin couldn't be at the meeting, but she gave a lot of input. And here comes my coworker. It's to be said that the school district has been doing a lot of good work along these lines and having conversations, and we're on a learning journey together. We're not really at the beginning, we're sort of in the middle, and it's probably an endless journey, but here we are. We want to join peer organizations in doing what needs to be done in regard to anti-racism. And Kat Haney brought an incredibly valuable document from the Montpelier Roxbury Public Schools, which you have received as a PDF. It's very comprehensive, and it's a model that we can think about. We can also ask our other local schools, Paul Smith's, the community college, Northwood, North Country, what are they doing? So we're not going to do this in a vacuum. That's the point. So DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is the term that people are using these days. And we want to make sure that it includes not just race as an issue, although that is our anchor issue. That's what brought us together. But we also want to protect LGBTQ people in the community, low income, and other marginalized groups that we might have among us. My cat loves PowerPoint. The Dignity for All Students Act has done a good job thus far in dealing with these issues as they arose. But this group of people that met feels that we need something more specific. So as we proceed, we just have to acknowledge that we are pretty much all white. And that's not a bad word, and it doesn't make us bad people. It's just who we are as a community, and it's important to state that. A lot of times, a little bit of something racist or a microaggression will happen, and it's totally unintended. I do it myself regularly, and it's embarrassing to be called out. And I'm learning, and we all need to learn language and things to look out for and how to identify your own bias, unconscious bias, and things like that, which are quite powerful. So the policy should mandate trainings, but not if they're going to be outside of the regular workday, because teachers and staff are at they're up to here right now, obviously. If possible, an effort should be made to assess the teaching and learning environments with a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens, identify gaps and flaws, and systematically update as needed. We recognize that's very, very ambitious and unfunded, but it's something to think about and be part of the conversation. Young alumni, I've learned, have given feedback to the school district that they feel they're in a bubble when they go out to college or work in the city or otherwise depart from Lake Placid. They may feel somewhat unprepared for the world's diversity. We definitely want to find some grown-ups of color to bring into the community, but you can't just hire a Black person and throw them in. It doesn't work that way. It's very painful for them. And we have to do some work as a community to make sure we're ready to welcome a Black leader into our community, or an Asian leader, or a Mexican, or you understand, a person of color other than a white teacher. Hopefully, several of them. The policy should have a lock on a yearly review so that it just pops up automatically. Oh yeah, we have to think about that. What are we doing? The group felt strongly that we should provide some framework or groundwork for students to come together and talk about these issues as an organized group. And I personally don't know what that would look like, but it seems like an important thing to recommend, that we're not just going to leave it to the students to bring it to our attention. We're going to somehow be a little more proactive and let it be known, maybe, that it's okay to talk about these things. Kat made the point that library collections are really powerful tools for educating students about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it would be great if our collections were assessed with that kind of lens. The current term is BIPOC or BIPOC. It's Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and it's meant to cover the widest possible send out the widest possible net to describe people of color. Back to what was said earlier, there's already a lot of work happening in the school. I know there's conversations and efforts and have been for years. And we should quantify that and figure out a baseline. Where are we? What already exists? What needs to be added or thought about? And the full responsibility of this cannot fall on the shoulders of the teachers, which is why it has to be a board policy, I think. And once again, the point that although trainings, we really want people to attend trainings, it's not going to take out of their evening time or their weekend time because they're already so busy. And finally, we should figure out a way to include families in this discussion because racism can be taught at home. I learned it from my mother. And so if we are just doing this without including families, we're missing an entire audience of our community. Any questions at this point?
Martha, I would just like to say that what a wonderful, much needed effort to the entire group, and what a honest and very thoughtful summary that you just gave. It's just, it's very, very much needed. And I think all of those areas that you mentioned, just race and ethnicity and gender. And I think also that I've thought about this a lot in our current climate in our country right now, that I think our students and faculty also, I hope whenever we develop this plan, we'll talk to our students too about the tolerance of other people's ideas and ideologies and accepting that not everyone's going to agree with you. And I think that all just goes into this whole thing of tolerance and acceptance. And I think that's a big issue in our country today, is people just not accepting to agree to disagree, and how harmful that is to our students. And again, like what you just said, a lot of these students learn this at home. And so I just think it's a really worthwhile effort, and it's much appreciated.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Martha, you made a couple of recommendations on, where to go from here. What's the plan as far as moving forward?
There is no plan. I'm looking to you all for guidance. I've checked off the task, have a meeting and provide a memo of recommendation. And so now it's up to us as a group to figure out the next steps.
So like a policy, developing a policy that should go to the policy committee.
Probably, yeah.
Well, you can really do it more than one way, right? So this committee met once, but that doesn't mean this committee could not meet again. This committee could develop these specific ideas and then, pass that to the policy committee. I mean, I think half the people on this committee are also on the policy committee. But this being a very specific committee, could focus on that in the way that they do. So that would be an option as well.
I'd like to see you get back together and come up with some options, for your plans or suggested.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any comments, questions?
No, I was just going about funding. Any funding opportunities in this area? Outside funding?
I haven't really thought about it yet, to tell you the truth, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are.
Some grants, for like the library, et cetera.
Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely like the part, Martha, where you do talk about the families and involving the families and bringing them into it. I might have missed it. I had to step out of the room for a moment, but I do think it is important that our families are part of this, because obviously they have a huge impact on their own children.
Yep.
Martha, I also think that, there may be some interest in having others join any further discussions.
Yeah.
And, I would be encouraging of that for, any member of our faculty or staff who, would like to join in. I think there's plenty of interest.
Great. I'm so glad. So maybe I'll connect with Karen about scheduling this at a time that works for many people, if that's okay. Thank you. Thanks all.
Thank you, Martha.
Thanks, Martha.
Succession planning. Martha's been a busy lady. She and I have been working together on a succession plan, and I don't believe this draft made it in. It did.
Today.
Okay. There are some changes in this draft, so and I can briefly go over those. Roger, these are your comments, which I appreciate.
Oh,
And Karen, thank you for your comments as well. The team consisting of 6 stakeholders, I just threw in at least 6 stakeholders.
Yeah.
That way, we're not limiting that number. And then there was a grammatical change, just says forward the document 2 now. Roger pointed out that the are generally done in between the first and second interview. So
yeah, Rick, and I guess I didn't mean to be suggesting that you couldn't or shouldn't do it before the first. It's just there would be a change, and I think there should be a good reason for doing it that way, and there might be.
well, it's
So.
very timely, I know. And if you have 7 good candidates, that's 21 phone calls.
Right.
So I think the committee in the past, any that I've been a member of, had a real nice job of doing a quick social media, Google search, and coming up with any startling revelations that may be out there. So I think that's best. And then again, the team members a minimum of 10. Because if we do include the original committee plus board members, a full board, then there needs to be more than 10 people. So please look that over. If you do have any suggestions, let us know. And again, thank you, Martha, for your work on that as well. If you're still there.
She had to take a break. She left a note in the chat box.
Okay. She had to take a cat out.
No, more pressing than that, I think.
Okay.
I guess so.
All right, if there are no questions on the session plan, superintendent's report.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah, I'd like, I guess I'm going to continue my focus on continue to call our reopening efforts, even though we've been open now for 5 weeks. And I'm going to take it on a little bit of a roller coaster ride, because we spend a lot of time emphasizing the many ways that we can make school as positive as possible. And I'm going to just share a number of examples of how positive that is. And I'm also going to take you on the downside of that, which is some of the challenges, and in particular, an upcoming challenge that we're looking at in terms of some of the rule changes that we now may have to address that frankly, I'm not sure how we're going to do it. So, but we'll start with the positive. I did a little brainstorming with the administrative team just on what's going on in the schools and what can we comment on. Number one, positive attitudes. So many people happy to be there, doing their best, rising to the challenge. And I'm talking about faculty and staff. I'm also talking about students. I'm also talking about parents who have been so wonderfully supportive. We've had excellent compliance. Our students are doing what we ask them to do. They, in some cases, are embracing the masks as an accessory, not a burden. Many different styles out there that we're enjoying every day. We have parents who are following the requests we make of them. We know it's not easy. We ask them to not come into the building, and then they're to follow these sick protocols, which we've talked about here, and which is also going to be a topic of our most significant challenge. And then just, being patient with the drop off and the pickup. It's been a significant change, and we have a lot of people who are inconvenienced by this, but they're not expressing that to us. What they're expressing is support for what we're trying to accomplish. And then our teachers have been doing their best to support each other. And sometimes that means really just teaching each other how to do things. We have students on remote instruction. We have teachers helping each other figure out how to do that well. And how to manage all these different materials that they're juggling. They're teaching materials, their technology, and then they're cleaning materials, right? So there's all kinds of things going on. And a shout out to our cafeteria staff. So the lunch process has not been easy. This has been a big change. We are delivering food to classrooms. We have trays that go out to all the different classrooms in the elementary school. That means trays going from one side of the building to the other, and then on 2 floors without an elevator, because we are also in a construction project and our elevators are not operable right now. So they're carrying those down. At the middle and high school, that means up and down 3 stories, and then delivering them to classrooms. And that means delivering them and making sure that kids have, the meals, the side dishes, the utensils, the napkins. It's really incredible what we're doing, and what our cafeteria staff and those volunteers who are helping them are able to do. So a big shout out to them. But we have people who are stepping in to cover for each other right now, because we do not have many substitutes who are willing to come to work in a school right now. We do have a handful of very committed ones, but sometimes we have more need than we have substitutes. So we have people covering for each other. We've introduced some dramatic changes that people are adjusting to. One of them is the block schedule here in the middle and high school. Students, typically the traditional schedule was 40 minutes per period. Now we're talking about 80 minutes per period. That's not just more time. That's a change in the way you teach and a change in the way kids learn. And I've heard many positive comments from people, both teachers and students, about the outcome of that. But the adjustment is not easy, and people are making that adjustment. We have subjects that, the pandemic is not supportive of. Phys ed's one of those. So we have phys ed teachers who are doing alternative phys ed activities that we didn't ever do before. Orienteering, walking around the lake, skateboarding. That's a fun one to think about, right? Our kids skateboarding during phys ed class. So we have a lot of pride in what we're able to accomplish, and we are maintaining academic rigor despite the challenges of all these different procedures. And that was really our goal this whole time. It was not just to open the doors, and it's not just to keep things clean. It was to balance educational integrity with health and safety. And so that's really what we've been working to do. And we believe that we're accomplishing that right now. Hats off to all the people in the schools who are making that happen. We also have an abundance of patience, not just amongst our families out there, but also inside our buildings. Our secretaries, our custodians, our bus drivers, they're having to make these big changes, and they're just going with it. And it often means a lot more work. We have the whole remote student issue, right? So we have our teachers who are teaching many students in their classrooms, and then a handful of students remotely. And so we have teachers who are willing to do that and trying to do it in a way that actually engages those students with much success. It's a hard thing to do, though. Then we have the generosity of people on the outside who are just looking to help. And as an example, on Friday, the 25th, we had a half day. And we had an offer from community members, Greg Borzilleri from the Mirror Lake Boat Rental, and then Phoebe Burns and Mickey Healy and their staff at Simply Gourmet and Big Mountain Deli. And they decided to provide lunch to every faculty and staff member in our buildings. And what a wonderful thing that was. So much appreciated. Yes, delicious, but also I think representative of that kind of support that really our faculty and staff need right now. They need to know people support them, and they're hearing that loud and clear. So just a lot of positive things, and things that we're really proud of, and things that we're thinking of every day, and things that we're trying to sustain and move forward. So that's my upside of the roller coaster ride. A little downside, we've had some challenges, right? We've had some challenges with things like the block schedules. We've had some challenges with some remote students. Sometimes our students aren't engaging and they're not connecting. So we're trying some things to support them, but that's a challenge. And then on top of that, we are trying to deal with an ever-changing landscape of rules and regulations. So I'm going to go to that because this is the most challenging one. And this is I'm going to leave you a little bit on a downslope here, because we've received 2 or 3 different versions of New York State Department of Health guidance on certain issues. And one of those came up here the last time, and I put some of that in information. Already, some of that information is out of date, because last week we received a new document, and that's this one from the Department of Health. And it attempted to clarify what we're responsible for in terms of when students or staff show symptoms of one of the many symptoms that are associated with COVID-19, and then how we're supposed to respond. Now, we've talked about this before. You're supposed to respond with a visit to the doctor and a negative COVID test before returning, right? So we've talked about that, and we've addressed some of the challenges of that. So this guidance came out a few days ago, and it made some two flexible tweaks, and that, in other words, adding a little bit more flexibility in, and then one very difficult shift in another direction. So the 2 flexible tweaks were to allow, in cases when the symptom represents a chronic condition that somebody is facing, to allow that to prevent the need for a COVID-19 test. So that's one piece of flexibility. Another piece of flexibility in this document is that if there's an alternative diagnosis, if a medical provider says that there's an alternative diagnosis, that can be confirmed with a medical test. So I'm talking about a strep test. So if a strep test is positive and the medical provider says, yes, this symptom is directly related to strep, not to COVID, they don't need the COVID test. Or a flu test that tests positive. Not, this looks like a viral condition, we don't have a test for it, but that's what it is in my judgment. Not allowed, it says so in here, right? So it's a little bit more flexibility, not much, but a little, okay? But then there's an additional piece in here. And it says in all other cases, students or staff have to, in order to return to school, have to demonstrate a negative COVID-19 test. They've added within 48 hours. And what they've said is that if the student or staff member cannot demonstrate a negative COVID-19 test in those 2 days, then we're to assume that student or staff member are positive. So the result has not come in after 2 days. The assumption is intended, the assumption is to be that they're positive, and that we're then supposed to respond to a positive case rather than to an unknown case. So that may not sound dramatic, but I've been playing this one out in my head, and I can tell you where it could go, and the potential is worrisome, right? So we have times have responses within 48 hours, but it's not the rule. It's not every case. We probably have 3 or 4 students or staff members that are being referred to healthcare providers every day. And in each of those cases, with rare exception, they're being asked to go get a COVID test. And sometimes those results come back in 2 days, but sometimes it's 3 days. And in some cases, we had a couple of cases where the results have been misplaced. Test was taken, misplaced results, they had to go search for them, took 4 or 5 days to receive those. Now, up to now, those have just been uncertain, and we've asked the people to not come back until those are finalized, which they've done, and it's been fine, right? We haven't had a positive case yet. But in this case, 48 hours, and then the assumption is positive, what it would mean is that if those results aren't back in, then we would have to declare the student or staff member positive, contact the Department of Health, and the Department of Health would then have to go through their process, which, if you're familiar with it, means that the person is to be isolated, and then all of their direct contacts are to be in quarantine. Now, their direct contacts would be their family members. Their direct contacts would be their classmates. Their direct contacts would be perhaps people on the bus with them. Their direct contacts might be their modified soccer team. This could really be a dramatic shift. And so I'm expressing this to you tonight without necessarily a positive ending, because we're in the middle of it, right? This just arrived. We have members of the Department of Health actively trying to figure out if there's any alternative to this. We're having meetings as we speak. We're contacting legislators, and they're just learning about it as well. We have a scheduled meeting. We had a scheduled meeting for tomorrow, and now it's going to be put off until Thursday with the Essex County Department of Health, working in coordination with Clinton County Department of Health in order to come up with some clarity. So we are not implementing it until we get this clarity, but I don't know how much longer it will be before we're going to be expected to implement it.
Wouldn't this create some sort of like infinite loop? This is like a video game reference, but like where, so those 2 people, that one person, let's say, is declared positive because doesn't get the test within 2 days. So then everybody else has to be quarantined. And do they have to test positive or do they get tested within 48 hours and get the results?
No, not as a quarantine. As a quarantine, you're not required to test. You're required to be out for 14 days. And in those 14 days, to demonstrate no symptoms, I believe.
But if you choose to go get tested,
Yes.
it shortens your period, but the question there is, what if it doesn't come back in 48
48
hours?
hours.
You're right,
Right.
now it turns into
Okay,
this.
there you go. There's the
so
loop.
yeah, it's not the way I thought it was. Yeah, it's
Yes.
Yeah, the whole school would be quarantined.
Right.
Yeah.
Short order.
Yeah.
Is the positive, put in quotes, negated once the test comes back negative?
So my understanding is it is,
Okay.
which means that this could also be, you could use another allegory here, some kind of back and forth
Okay.
thing where we're being expected to quarantine, 30 members of the community for 14 days, and then after a day or two, never mind, and then go back to normal, and then have it happen again. I'm really worried about this. I'm worried about this because I don't think it can be sustained. I don't think you can sustain an open school with this.
It's very difficult,
Yeah.
Roger. It's very concerning. And that document, I also printed it out today myself. First of all, the document in and of itself, I think, is somewhat confusing unless it was just me. But I think the document and the graphs that they show is confusing. But I mean, if you have 1 or 2 children, whether it be at the elementary or the middle high school, once you've tracked them down with all the people that they've met and teachers, what else are you going to do except school's closed for 2 days or whatever it is they need to do until they figure it out. And like you said, 3 days later, you could go back in and then there's another child in the same scenario. It really is quite a mess. I just.
Potentially, yes. So I agree. Again, that doesn't mean we're shrugging our shoulders to it, right? We're trying to figure out, how we can get the word out. One way is right here, right now. I want people to know that this is a possibility, and and therefore maybe we can do all we can to support people getting these things in a timely fashion so that they can be back. We know that we're one of the rural areas that actually has a pretty solid testing system in place that can respond in 48 hours. So, depending on the timeliness of, transitioning from symptom to doctor to testing, it is possible. So the faster we can do that, the better. But just to prepare people as well that, the last thing we're trying to do is disrupt the kind of school year we've been having up to this point. And that's, I guess, partly my reason for sharing with you all is positives. Those positives are real. It's not a story we're telling, right? So we've accomplished a lot. We've been very successful, and this could really change that. And so we need to get the word out, and then we're going to do everything we can to figure out, working with people over at the Adirondack Medical Center for sure, to see if there's a way to speed things up. And maybe there's other avenues. Again, we're not really sure, but we're going to try to do everything we can to try and sustain all this good stuff that we're doing and not get sidetracked or really run into the brick wall of this guidance. So that's the up and down that I wanted to share with you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I hate to end on a down note like that. I know that I'm going to come into school tomorrow, and 99% of the people won't be thinking about that. They'll be thinking about doing the right thing today for kids, and that's how it's been. So I'll still worry about this other piece, and I'll be working on it, and that's kind of where we are.
I'll give you a high note. As you know, I work throughout the Tri-Lakes, and not a day goes by that I don't get a remark that how envious parents are of those going to other school systems, that what this district has done and how we're back. That's one, and the other is the blocks. I mean, I've heard nothing but positives from students, teachers, parents. Haven't heard anything. And it's refreshing to see the kids out playing tennis, out walking around the lake, doing some real life PE type of activities. So,
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Roger, for all of your work on this. I know that it must be a burden on you, just overseeing a district through all of this, and it's very much appreciated.
Thanks, Colleen.
So far, my kids have said it's fine.
And that's a rave, right?
That's pretty good. It's
Yeah,
the best
we'll take
marks
that.
I've had so far.
If that's what we get from all of our kids, we're going to take
Yeah,
that.
well, F. At 5.
Great. Thank you, Roger.
Okay.
Moving along, we go to information for the board is next. You have 2 files attached, as Roger already pointed out. There, some information's outdated. There's the healthcare provider letter and the parental letter. Then there are 3 attachments in the executive files, of which Roger has invited executive session for at least 2 of those. So if anybody would like more information on those, please let us know, and we can either do an executive session at the conclusion of this or at the next meeting. Any comments regarding that? Linking goals with agenda items. Anybody have anything?
Martha's presentation, students first and foremost, I think.
Anyone else? If you do, please get them to Karen. Thank you. Capital project update.
Dana, I'm gonna invite Dana Wood to share what he knows. There's a lot of good news from the capital project world, and maybe Dana will share some of that with us.
We can hear them tap dancing.
They're out the window, yes, right now. The roofers, Dana, the roofers are here for their second shift, and they're right outside the
still there?
window. Yes.
Well, we could start with that then. The roofers are actually working.
Yeah. Dana, you want to talk about the wall?
Sure. Hopefully you guys were able to see that it does look like at least the concrete portion of the wall is done. They took the frames off a couple days ago, and they're starting to backfill, and they're working on the stone and making their way up the hill. You can see that the walkway, the pad for the walkway is all done, so they should be pretty close to starting putting the pavers down. I think they're going to start either later this week or Monday or Tuesday of next week. I think they're going to be putting up the fencing along the walkway as well later part of this week, so that's progressing nicely. I don't know if you've noticed that they have everything in place in the front of this middle high school for the lights. They're going to go across along the walkway. So those are in. The electrical for the new junction box in the oval, that's been in. They haven't gotten to wiring yet. So really, you're looking at a lot of the final pieces starting to be put in place for the projects. The elementary school, they're kind of closer to the ends than the middle high in terms of the work there. But as the information says, really starting to go through the punch list of all the little things that need to get done. The heating system is being balanced and ready to go, so that they can check that off their box. But yes, we're definitely closer to the end than the beginning at this point.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dana.
Anything else? Walkway looks terrific. For both ends.
It's all starting to look really good. And I have to say this morning, it was kind of funny. The bells at the town hall went for 7 o'clock. And before the bells were done, the hammering started. So I was like, they're all sitting there waiting for those bells to go off. It was really funny. So.
And the elementary, great.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really looks nice. It's just fun to drive by there and see all the new messages that are put up. And I just think the stonework, everything just looks really nice. It's a wonderful addition to the property for sure.
Anything else in the project?
Nope.
Change orders, there's 3 items. 1 and 2 are those that we voted on in the past, and then there's a GC 15, which is a asbestos removal. Any questions, comments on the change orders? Those should be coming to an end pretty soon, shouldn't they?
Change orders?
Yeah.
I'd like to think, yes. We've been saying no lately.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really, geez.
We've been saying no often lately. So
Any questions on anything to do with the capital project?
So are the roofers working through the weekend?
yeah, so the roofers, they've been coming with a large crew since Friday, from Friday, Saturday during the day, and then Monday, second shift, tonight, second shift. And my understanding is for the rest of this week for sure. We're hoping that they can get it done by the end of this week, but we do recognize there are some real limits. One of them has to do with the aluminum roofing that's on this very small extension of the auditorium. It's basically the construction that built out for the exit, the new exit from the auditorium. And then they just put they put the new roof on there only a week or 2 ago, and getting the right size roof, that in and of itself might be a delay. We do expect the elementary school roof that's been not finished now for, I would say, maybe a couple of months to be finished this week, as well as what you're hearing outside these windows. We're in the library. the middle and high school library, and there are windows that go right out to the roof. And so we see roofers through the windows. And what they're doing is they're finishing up the edging, the metal edging, as well as the curbs, although they might have finished the curbs already. And then some other final sealing jobs. They're supposed to sealing the rubber roof against the walls. So we are expecting to have that done this week, weather permitting, as we stated in the letters that I shared with you. Yeah, but there may be a real limit on that one roof. So
That was the extension in the email. Was that the extension that the attorney was referencing? The extension you just,
I believe so. Yeah, yeah. Since that email, we had a in-person via electronics face-to-face meeting, at which we had these sort of followed up on those conversations.
anything else?
Yes.
If not, meeting minutes, those are under the consent, as are 6A, B, and C, the personnel matters. Action items, there's no special education. If there's any questions on the October 20th packet, please feel free to send those questions. If not, good of the cause. Nothing. Okay, we'll enter into the adjournment phase. Next meetings, the location is right here, October 20th, November 3rd, November 17th. I won't go to the next one. We'll leave that month alone.
Yeah, right. That's
Karen likes this. New business, any new business topics? Martha, one question. When did you want to do the dashboard? Quarterly, monthly?
Quarterly, I think.
Quarterly. Okay.
Dana, does that sound reasonable to you?
Yes.
We'll just have to figure that one out, Karen. You don't need that under old business, do you? Martha and I had that discussion. Okay, is there anything else? If not, we'll recommended action is to adjourn the meeting. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Liam.
Second.
You got Colleen? Thank you.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
7-4, 0 against. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great evening.
Good to see everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
I could kind of get used to my world having like people